Good afternoon. I'm delighted to have you here for my presentation on digital storytelling across the curriculum. My presentation will focus on different ways digital storytelling can be implemented on various grade levels and in a variety of disciplines. I will be showing digital stories that teachers in my course Integrating Technology and Literacy have created, or ones that their students have created, or ones that teachers have shared with me and have given me the opportunity to share with you today. So let me begin. I'm Judy Arts. I'm a professor at University of St. Joseph in West Hartford, Connecticut. Prior to that, I was an English teacher on the middle school and high school level, and I noticed in my teaching in those grade levels that the students very much enjoyed making films. So I brought their enthusiasm with me into higher ed when I began working with teachers. I want to begin with this claim by Dan Charsky, which I very much agree with. In today's age, when we have digital tools available to us for students to create videos, it is a basic skill that we should be working with in terms of what we're doing in the classroom and the kinds of projects we are empowering students with. Let's begin reviewing what is digital storytelling. I'm assuming those attending the webinar already are familiar with the term, which is sometimes used interchangeably with video production, filmmaking, and in this particular webinar, I'm using the term as indicated in this particular slide, which is that digital storytelling is telling stories using digital tools. And my emphasis will be on very strongly on the curriculum focus of digital storytelling, particularly with teachers creating digital stories that enhance their curriculum and that enhance learning for students in the classroom. The digital stories that I will be featuring divide into these three broad categories. Sometimes when we think of digital storytelling, we primarily think of it as narrative, but digital storytelling can also be used for informational purposes and for argumentation, such as the creation of a public service announcement, or what some of us abbreviate as a PSA. So in this presentation, I will be showing you digital stories that fall into all of those categories. In each of my slides, you'll notice I will have a URL. Those URLs are links to the digital stories so you can watch them after the webinar. I'm starting with pre-kindergarten, and ordinarily when I teach kindergarten teachers or preschool teachers, they tell me they have very limited technology in their classroom. So we work on the concept of them using their cell phones and bringing their own cell phones into the classroom for their students to create digital stories, or for them to create digital stories for their students. So in this first case, on the left-hand side, that is a link to find a digital story that were created by preschool children at the end of the school year. The students had created illustrations of what they would like to remember from the school year. Each child's illustration was uploaded into the VoiceThread app. Then each child had a chance to audio record their version of their illustration and what they wanted to remember from the school year. This kind of project can be done with students at any grade level, especially now it's March, but as we think of the end of the school year coming, in May, that might be a good time for students to create a memory book as a class project. The second illustration of a digital story I have on this slide is of a teacher who created a digital story to review the concept of counting. She ordinarily used fruit kebabs that she brought into the class that she placed on a skewer to review the concept of counting. She then created a digital story to further review the concept and illustrate the point she was making. In creating the digital story, the students had opportunity at any time to watch her story and to review it. For instance, they could do this at home. In this next case, kindergarten children created an original story called Mary Had a Toaster, based, of course, on the well-known story, Mary Had a Lamb. The students drew illustrations, and each child in the class told a different part of the story. So this is a digital story that has a plot, characters, and setting. In the next illustration, we have here a teacher creating a digital story to use at Parents' Night. And again, this can be used for teachers at any grade level. Often, for instance, in the high school, we find that attendance at Parents' Night might drop off. So creating a digital story to review what you want to say at a Parents' Night and then having it available online or sending a link to parents might be a way to reach those parents who are not able to attend, or for the parents that want to attend and have an opportunity to review what you said at a Parents' Night. Having the digital story available is another way to archive the presentation. Okay, for teachers who have very limited access to audio recording or for whatever reason want to use illustrations to prompt students' writing, the app Storybird is one that teachers in my Integrating Technology and Literacy course, once they're introduced to it, get really excited about. This particular kindergarten teacher was doing a unit on fairy tales, and she created a digital story, an informational one on the elements of fairy tales. She then had her students use the Storybird app to create digital stories. So using this link here would be a way to access the digital stories those students created. Storybird is an app that can be used with people of all ages. Actually, authors themselves have used this application and have created chapter books, which is something that could be done with students in upper elementary school, middle school, and high school. This is an example of using digital storytelling to review content information. In this case, the teacher was reviewing part of the science curriculum focused on nutrition. I also wanted to include in this slide an image showing the credits at the end, which acknowledge where the teacher got the images that were used in the presentation. I want to remind people that it's important to convey this point to students and to convey to them the importance of using Creative Commons images that they are free to use, and to acknowledge where they have gotten those images. This particular digital story is one that integrates several areas of the curriculum. One is the reading language arts, using storybooks, having students read storybooks aloud, and also integrates with the science curriculum. A popular unit in the lower elementary school is the process by which a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. And of course, Eric Hall's illustrated storybook is a great way to work on that lesson. So you could see from reading the blog post that the teacher wrote here how she integrated reading and science, and how her students were also involved in reading aloud the story that she put together in her digital story. This is a case of using digital storytelling to review vocabulary. In this case, each Monday, the teacher created an annotator reviewing that week's vocabulary words. This particular example is a vocabulary that was taken from a book that children would be reading. Again, at any grade level, students or teachers can create digital stories as a way to review vocabulary, and the visual element and the auditory element give students hands-on practice with learning vocabulary, as opposed to straight memorization and taking a quiz. This is an example of using digital storytelling to review a common theme in the science curriculum, and it's 3 states of matter, which is covered in the elementary school curriculum. It's also covered in more depth in the science curriculum at the upper grade levels. Here I have a case of a teacher creating an informative digital storytelling, documenting and explaining the history of the town in which the children live. This concept of creating digital stories about places, be it a state, a country, a geographic region, is an excellent way not only to review information within the class, but also if you're doing cross-class collaborations with classes in different parts of the world. If students create a digital story about where they live, that would be something that would be excellent to share with other classes that you are doing these collaborations with. So it would be a great way to introduce your class to another class, as well as giving the other class a feeling of where you live. Okay, Okay, I also believe that in creating digital stories, teachers just have time to practice with the tools themselves. So when I introduce an application like Storybird, I create a few examples myself and I post them on my website, and teachers can look at those before they are introduced to the application. So this is just one that I created. I like to create digital stories with Storybird that can be used in a variety of grade levels, and this is one that I thought would be appropriate for second grade. This is an example of integrating digital storytelling into an existing cross-class collaboration. These are two teachers who work at the same school. One is a second grade teacher and the other is a kindergarten teacher. And they have a buddy program in which the second graders team up and act as mentors for the first graders. And in this case, it was a science unit. The students were going outside the school building, staying within the confines of the school ground, and they were doing a unit on the season of fall. And the kindergarten children were being asked to learn about the fall by using all 5 of their senses. They collected their data with the second graders on a worksheet that then became a planning sheet for them to create a digital story which integrated the young children's illustrations, and then the second graders work with the kindergarten children to add audio recordings to those illustrations. So here I'm showing you the worksheet the students had with them when they were outside, and you can see there's 2 students' names on it. One would be the kindergarten child and the other would be the buddy mentor. And on the right-hand side, you see one of the illustrations that the children in kindergarten did. And as noted, these illustrations were then uploaded into a digital story program, and then they were narrated. This is an example of a digital story created by a 3rd grade teacher, and he used it for a read aloud. So after he created his story, he showed it in class and he read the text aloud. So doing digital stories using a tool like Storybird is a great way to present original story and at the same time do a read aloud with the class. Okay. This is a digital story that when I first started teaching the course Integrating Technology and Literacy, I used to illustrate the power of digital storytelling to convey, in this case, something related to that concept of character education. And this digital story uses crayons and a coloring box to address diversity. This is another cross-class collaboration project using 2 different schools, and the children would meet together in one of the schools on a regular basis and work on a project together. They were able to use digital storytelling to recapture their experiences of the cross-collaboration over a period of several months. This is a case of a special ed teacher doing a unit with her students that would come to her for breakout time, and they were doing a unit on growing plants from seeds, and it's a multi-layered lesson, as you can see. So the unit did start off with the students reading books about growing plants, and in this case we were reading a book by Eric Hall and another book by Helene Jordan. The students did some planning, as you can see, using these brainstorming tools. And so they collected information from the books they were reading, and then they used this information to grow their plants. All of the information that was gathered was sorted through and eventually put into an Animoto to review the whole unit of study. And as the teacher observed, the students loved this process and they asked to do more digital stories of this kind. And this is just showing you some of the information that was inputted into the Animoto. Also want to note, some people question how can you get narration into an Animoto? And the way to do that is to do a video recording, which is what was going on here in this last particular image, is the students were reading aloud their illustrations and their text. And those are video recorded and then uploaded into Animoto. This is a digital story I found online that I had permission to use for our presentation. This is an elementary school where students are focusing on STEM, and this is just one example of a video they created on how to recycle.